Another thing that I say, and I don't say this as much because nobody wants to hear it, but like a beefsteak is not a Bitcoin event. Like it's really not. Like I think that it's like these, and I think about these meetups the same way. You know, like if you went to a beefsteak and you had a great time, even if Bitcoin goes to zero, like it still served its purpose, right? Like Bitcoin could fail, and I still would consider the beefsteak a success if people had a good time doing it and, you know, made memories and made friends and stuff like that. And that's what these guys are doing around Bitcoin, yes, but also just like I think it improves people's lives, and I think that's, you know, or it potentially improves people's lives, and I think that's just like a, you know, what more could you do with your life, like or your time? I think that's like a great thing to be doing.
Welcome to the Builders in Bitcoin podcast, a podcast about the people who bring Bitcoin to life. I'm your host, Rod, and I go by the handle BitKite on Twitter. I was lucky enough to have awayslice, the man sharing the art of the beefsteak with Bitcoiners across the US, in the studio with me to discuss his mission to bring people from all over to the table to enjoy his unique and satisfying feasts. In this episode, we dig into what a beefsteak is, the history behind the beefsteak, the perks, pitfalls, and strategies of growing an event and community, and a lot more. I sincerely enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you will too. So let's just jump right in. Awayslice, how the heck are you?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to be back at Bitcoin Park.
Yeah, man, it's good to see you. Are you comfortable?
Yeah, I couldn't be more. I got my boots off.
Good.
Airing out the old walkers.
Your dogs were barking?
Something like that.
I know we were just talking off air, but I've been finding so much joy in doing these podcasts because, you know, getting 1 hour or so of uninterrupted time with friends to catch up on selfishly with the questions and the topics that I want to talk about. So I couldn't appreciate this more.
Yeah, amen. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
I'm
man.
honored.
We got a lot to talk about, but I know we were just talking like a little bit off air again as well. But the jingles and, you know, your beefsteak, like as you're creating a beefsteak, you mentioned a playlist. Like what? And we'll get into what is a beefsteak. But I am curious, like how do you even come up with your playlists?
You know, there's some things kind of determine the direction that I try to go with a beefsteak. I guess it's a historic event, so I always kind of start a little bit with the time period that the beefsteak would happen. But then there's also kind of like the aesthetic feel of the place that the beefsteak is happening. You know, so for instance, a Miami beefsteak is gonna feel more Miami, obviously, than something like a Nashville beefsteak would feel. So I kind of go for that time period, maybe music from that part of the country from that time period in the beginning of the night, and then kind of like creep it more into modern upbeat feels later on in the evening. And you know, sometimes I can reel in a band that feels
Yep.
good. Like in Austin, we had this band called the Texas String Assembly, which I could not say the day of the beefsteak, but they were awesome. You know, they're kind of like a cross between like a bluegrass country band and like upbeat, just kind of like had a lot of energy. So that makes it easy. That makes my job easier. And you know, it's just one of those, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that happens in the background. I feel like no one ever notices the playlists, but I do spend a ton of time making playlists specifically for every beefsteak.
Yeah.
And that's just something I like doing also.
I've been to, I think I have 4 aprons now, and it's a collector's item, even though they're probably like, you know, a couple bucks from Walmart, and there's no branding or anything like that on them, but I still hang them up in my home office, and they are there. And but I think, you know, when we say beefsteak, and I'm curious to know your answer when someone asks you what is a beefsteak, but I will say from my perspective, it is truly like a full-on experience, whether, you know, from eating amazing meats to having amazing dinner conversations to feeling the culture of the given town or city that we're in. And I'm honored to have, you know, host and have you here for the beefsteak here in Nashville.
Awesome. Thank you. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So when someone randomly does come up to you, not really anymore, but by the way, do you remember the first time we met?
It had to be at CK's house.
It was
right?
at CK's house
Yeah.
on his rooftop.
Back in the day.
Was that and how many beefsteaks have you done?
Oh, man. I have no idea.
No idea.
Maybe because they're not all on the record. So
There is
maybe,
a record?
yeah, maybe 10 or 12 or, some of them kind of fly under the radar,
Got it.
which is by design.
Yeah. So from my experience that night, and I remember it vividly, I'm like, I was, we're organizing Bitcoin 2019. We were in the bear market. I mean, price of Bitcoin was like 3K. CK is like, I'm gonna do this like event before the conference. I'm like, all right, man, that's on you. And then I got this buddy awayslice. He's gonna cook some meats on my grill and blah blah, and it'll be fun. I'm like, okay, cool. You're one of the most welcoming person. You're like, I introduce myself, and you're like, with your tongs, you're like, hey, try this. And I'm like, okay. And then that was my first experience with beefsteak and meeting you.
Yeah, that's so funny. I think, like we're talking about like planning these things and all the work that goes into making it happen. I don't think I have I often don't feel like I have, everybody talks about workflow, like how they
Mhm.
just can sit at a computer and like just do something for 3 hours. That does not exist in my life unless I'm standing at a grill. I think that's probably so I'm glad that you remembered that because I would not remember that. That's kind of like my in the zone moment. But it's also a day like, you meet a bunch of people on the same day. I didn't know a lot of those people coming.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was pretty fun night. I mean, there was like probably 40 people on that tight rooftop deck in San Francisco. Again, I'll never forget it. So what is a beefsteak?
It's so funny. I was thinking about that as you were saying it earlier. My elevator pitch is that it's all you can consume steak and beer with no utensils or napkins. And the thing I love about that elevator pitch is you can just see immediately whether or not someone is into it. They're like, when's the next one going to be? Like they either want to know that or they're kind of like, oh, that sounds interesting. Like they kind of give like a canned response. But for the more like esoteric question, what is a beefsteak? And I hate this about myself. I try more to define what it's not, and then let people define what it is for them, right? So like, it's not a dinner, like you don't leave hungry, but it's not a dinner. It's not a carnivore event, like there's lots of meat, but it's not targeted at any one person or groups of people, whatever. I just try to like create some parameters and hope people can make memories there.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities to a meetup, and that's why I was really excited about this chat. Not only just catching up with you, but just this chat because this will be aired after we do our private event here, which is called Grassroots Bitcoin, which we've invited over or about 100 meetup organizers from all over the U.S. and actually some from outside the U.S. To come here to Bitcoin Park and spend 2 days, meeting, building relationships, trading best practices, and getting to learn more about Bitcoin. But to that point with the beefsteak and a meetup, you go to a meetup, to really develop relationships and build out these different types of experience in a unique way. And so it's not just like this one thing. And I think you do a really good job about setting a framework or I like to call them guidelines when I'm organizing the meetup here to help enhance everyone's experience. Like one of the similarities we have is like a no photo policy,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
I'm curious to know your thoughts on the no photo policy and why you do that because I'll say this for an event, for an experience like yours, it is like one of the most photogenic type of opportunities. And if you want to quote unquote blow up, you just be, hey, add this hashtag and please, at me. But you don't do that. So I am curious to know your thought process there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I feel like a DNA test is a good example. Like
Interesting.
you're not only responsible for your privacy, you're responsible for everyone else's privacy, right? When you get a DNA test, you're compromising the privacy of everyone related to you. And the same thing happens when you take a picture in a room full of people. Like even if it's your buddy, everybody in the background is there at that time, recorded in your picture forever. And there's something about just respecting that. And then, the reason that that's there is in our community, and I don't know if community is the right word, but in the Bitcoin world, some of my favorite people are super privacy conscious, and I want for them to know that they can come to these events and not have to worry about that sort of thing. So that's the policy, and we do take it pretty seriously.
Yeah, and same here, at our meetups and so on, because a lot of these folks, I take a lot of pride and responsibility, and I think you do too, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, in terms of when people spend time with us to make it the best experience they could have.
Yeah, yeah,
We have families, we have friends, we could be trading that time anywhere else in the world, but we decided to spend it with you at Awayslice,
yeah,
with Rod and Matt at Bitcoin Park. So how do we make that the best 2 hours? How do we make it the best 4 hours of their life?
yeah, yeah. And there's like it's like with parenting. There's like a tightrope there where you want to create a place where they can have an experience, not tell them the experience they should be having.
Mhm.
And I say that with parenting because there's like this line where you have these things you want to give your kid. Sometimes you're trying to give them something you wish you had had, or sometimes you're trying to give them something you think they should have. And then there's this other thing that is the thing they need, right? And that can be really hard for us to figure out because it's clouded by like what we're trying to give them. But in the end, all we want is for them to be happy. I'm speaking for myself and my kids. Like you just want for them to have the best possible life, and that's not always giving them what you think they need or want them to have.
Totally. And we're gonna go on a tangent because I've been thinking a lot about this, and now I have more kids. Ever since maybe the last time I've seen you, I've not, I know it was only 6 months ago. I think I have like 6 more kids, but that was a joke, everybody. Um,
It's a half joke. It's a half joke.
that's true. Because you mentioned happiness, right? And happiness to me is relative to the person, and they it's up to them to figure out their own happiness. Like, of course, do we want our kids to be happy? But I have zero control over that. What I have control over is hopefully health, education, and figuring out the best potential to get them in the place that they can create purposeful work or purposeful value in their community and life.
Mhm.
Hopefully, find a partner, and then that will figure out happiness for them, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah.
And also going to a beefsteak, and then they'll be happy. But going back to the beefsteaks diet, agreed on, and going back to specifically guidelines, and not to go into this like policing or anything like that, but I truly believe when people are spending time and when you put these guidelines there, it really enhances the experience. So like when there's a no photo policy, we have a no talking policy during any of the meetups when the presentations are going on, because out of respect for these people that have maybe flown in to do their presentations or have the panel conversations, we want to give them the time that they deserve.
Sure.
And also we stay focused on Bitcoin. I mean, there's all these other meetups that, can focus on a lot of other topics, but we decided to spend these 2 hours focused on Bitcoin, the capital B, the monetary network, and then Bitcoin, the lowercase b, the asset. So I am curious on your side because I'm on the former camp when you do the elevator pitch, and I'm like, I'm in. When's the next one? And when's the next one? So I can just plan my life around a beefsteak.
Yeah.
Um, what are other guidelines that you put in place for folks to really enhance their experience?
I mean, going back to like, I try not to say what a beefsteak is. I just try to say what it's not. It's like you said, we bring people together. It's easy to kind of like confuse generating value in your life with earning money. And I really try to steer people away from viewing the beefsteak as a networking event, right? Like I don't want for you to hand out cards. I have kind of like a joke that like if you pass out business cards, you'll get banned. Because I don't want for you to like get somebody's email and, follow up with them the next day. Like I want for you to like make a friend, like have your phone be put away, like be present, listen to the sounds, pay attention to the playlist, smell the smells, like just be there with us. And hopefully that you'll make a memory there and you'll be making memories with people And then you form a bond that way. So I think, maybe if anything, the goal of the beefsteak is to help people form bonds, not business relationships.
Totally.
So that's kind of what I try to select for, just kind of like pushing people towards getting together and eating, messy food with your hands self-selects for that. You kind of have to be there with it while it's happening if you're going to be in there.
This is gonna seem like a tangent, but do you think the carnivore diet is a fad, or what's your take on a lot of these?
Oh man,
Not to put you on the spot.
no, it's good. I make a lot of parenting references because I just, I'm a parent. It's like
Yeah.
it's my main, if I have a goal, it's my priority in life is to be a good dad, and then everything else follows. So I relate a lot of things to parenting.
Amen.
I think that. Can you restate your question again so that I'm making it
So
so they hit it?
you touched on one of the things it's not. It's like a carnivore centric event.
Mhm.
Eating just beef and so on. And I was thinking about all these different diet fads. Like, not to put myself on the spot, but I love Harry Sudak to death, and he was on Peter McCormack's show. And right when that show started, he gives me a shout out about me being in the best shape of my life. I'm on one meal a day. I'm working out and all this stuff. Which, Harry, I love you to death. Thank you for that. But I have been doing all that stuff, and so
You look good. It shows.
thank you, brother.
Yeah.
I am curious because I do think it's all, especially not to again go on a tangent, but I do think food and exercising is relative to the individual and their genetic makeup and what they like to do.
Totally.
Right. So like
Yeah.
going into these fads, I am curious. Like it's a beef steak.
Yeah.
There's the carnivore diet. Like, how do you think about these different diet fads?
Yeah. I mean, is it a fad?
And I don't know if that's the right word, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm teeing you up in the wrong way.
No,
there.
no. It's the right question. I was thinking about it today because, like one thing, like I said earlier, it's not a carnivore dinner. I think that it's like, what is the? Oh, I was drawing the reference to parenting. What is the right thing to do when you're a parent? Think about how much that's changed over the course of our life. Like in terms of when they can have strawberries and when you can have peanuts and blah 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 blah. And if you travel 40 miles, the answer is probably different. So, is it a fad? My short answer is I think yes. Because I think what turns out to be healthy for us is just constantly changing throughout the course of
Yep.
our life. The other thing I think about the carnivore diet is a lot of people have never really done like an elimination diet, like a hardcore
Mhm.
elimination diet. And I think if you switch to just eating meat, it's probably the first hardcore elimination diet that a lot of people have ever done. And you don't realize how much other things make you feel crappy.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what the solution there is, but if you feel great eating meat, that's fine. I don't know if it's going to I don't know if it's going to make you live longer, but if it makes you live a better life and you're happier.
More
with
power
it.
to you.
Yeah. And actually backtracking to parenting, like I don't think you can't teach happiness, but I do think you can like encourage and maybe teach optimism,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then it's like if you're feeling good eating meat, like that's what you should do, and pay attention to what makes you feel good, and as long as it's not hurting anybody, like pursue that thing. And then the people that want everybody else to do it, like I can see that because it made you feel good. You want other people to feel good. You want them to partake in it, and I want that too. But like you said, I think everybody's body is different. Everybody feels different on different diets. Like I cannot eat carbs for a month and feel totally fine. My wife just is like a crank and she's really hard and she has like energy dips and stuff like that. So she just doesn't function the same on a ketogenic diet as I do. So it doesn't really work in our household.
Yep.
And I got to make the kids pasta anyways. So it's like hard for, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a fad. TLDR, yes. Carnivore.
Hot take.
Yeah.
The elimination diet, by the way, is really interesting because it makes it easy just to order meat, or it's easier, because when you're at a restaurant, it's like, all right, no bun, no nothing, just give me the hamburger.
Yeah.
No, nothing, just give me the steak. No, nothing, just give me the chicken,
That's a great point. It just removes decisions from your life.
Rather than you're like, oh, is there this type of oil on there, or is this like part of the family and blah, 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 blah.
Totally.
Funny, I read a book, it was recommended to me a while back, and funny enough, the title was called Plan B. where was this elimination diet, like basically A/B testing all these different foods that you would normally eat on a daily basis and see which ones, just journal energy levels like going up or down. And it's just been fun, especially when you bring it down to just one meal a day because you can do better testing in there. But there's another point that you made, especially around the happiness and optimism. And one thing that I love about the beefsteak is not only eating such amazing food, but it is that social connection. And you said the word longevity, which is something that I've been thinking about a lot, especially with all the kids I have. The more we're connected, we're all social beings, in my opinion. Um, and the more I feel I'm connected with other folks, especially Bitcoiners, with the Nashville community, my family, and my friends, I feel like I'm just happier.
Yeah.
And the beefsteak, from my experience, has helped further those connections from people that I may not even ever even thought about meeting or talking to. That's why, how do you look at figuring out that social connection? You mentioned the dinner table type of conversation and connection. How do you even think about the setup of a beefsteak?
You mean when you say the setup, you mean like the physical setup of like the tables and stuff, or like just traffic, like foot traffic, or
Yeah, so like maybe paint the picture of what a beefsteak kind of is for folks that are listening to the pod. Because in my experience from Miami, San Francisco, Austin, I mean, the list goes on. There's all these different pockets
yeah,
of tables, all standing.
yeah,
I don't think I've ever sat down at a beefsteak,
yeah. No,
actually.
no sitting.
Yeah.
There are seating areas, but no seated eating. Um, and that also kind of facilitates like social interaction. And like, how many times have you like gone to a dinner and just sat next to a total dud? You know what I mean? It's like
A lot of people think about that when they sit next to me.
yeah,
And
totally. Yeah.
that's why I love seated dinners because someone will actually sit next to me.
Yeah. So it's just like that thing where it's like, and it's not that like maybe that dud won't be a dud to someone else, right? So it's like you can move around and find your people, and that's encouraged, like and even I've like toyed sometimes with like putting different meats on different tables and just to like encourage people to go to from one place to another. But then, I try to just like the mechanics of setting up the tables, like there has to be enough room for people to all stand comfortably around a table and enough space between tables for people to stand around the tables and for other people to walk between those people. So there has to kind of be this like general spacing area, which I hate blocked walkways. I have this like, if I have a weird thing, it's like
Yeah.
the nails on a chalkboard in the world. It's just like restricted walkways, like where some guy just like is ignorant of blocking a walkway, which I am ignorant of blocking walkways all the time. I hate that. I hate standing in line, which is like, that's one like service policy I have is like, it can never take a long time to get a beer. If like some places
I
like
love that.
if some places like we're gonna have two bartenders, I'm like, there's no way they're gonna keep up with this many people coming to the bar. Like you need to have six bartenders. I just hate standing in line for a drink. There's no reason. And actually, I think what happens is when you stand in line for free drinks, what happens is everybody gets two drinks. I say everybody, this is what I do. Everybody gets two drinks and they only drink one of them. So you end up like wasting a ton of alcohol and booze for that reason. If everybody knows they can get a drink, like they just finish their drink, they go grab a next one. It just removes tension. Because then you're starting to finish your drink. You're like, do I want to get in line? You want to ask like, do you mind getting me a drink? It's just
Yeah.
like a terrible experience waiting for a drink. I kind of went off the rails there. I don't
No,
know.
I couldn't agree more. And this is where it feels like you create, and I don't think I know the answer to this, but like how you actually even created the beefsteak. It seems like you've been serving a number of people in the hospitality world, it seems like. And you've got a lot of battle scars, it feels like, or it seems like. And you're like, if I created this amazing dining experience, this is what it would look like. And you just created it.
Yes, sort of. I would say more that I modified it because it's a historic. Have you ever read that old article about written in 1939 where this guy kind of goes around to all the different beefsteaks in New York and everyone's like complaining about how great they used to be and all. Have you ever read that article?
You send it as
Oh,
part of your,
yeah.
and I read it like 3 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, I
But
mean, so it's like a historic event, and I read that article and I was like, this sounds amazing, especially that when people talk about what it originally was, where it was like guys eating steak and drinking beer out of pitchers in a basement. And that just sounds kind of magical to me. But so then once I read that article, I started looking for beefsteaks. I was like, they probably still exist, and they do. And some of them are pretty good. Some of them are great. Some of them are, they all kind of split off, and they do different things. Like there's still like firemen in New Jersey that hold beefsteak fundraisers and stuff like that. But they do this thing where they slice the steak and they put on a piece of bread, and whenever you want a piece of steak, you have to take the piece of bread that has the piece of steak on it. But nobody eats the bread, so it's just like piles of bread everywhere. And the pile of bread signifies how much steak you ate. Something about that just kind of
That's
feels wasteful and weird to me, but it is cool. And sometimes they'll have contests where you build a structure with your bread pieces or make a castle or something like that. But so I think I just more modified it into what I thought I wanted it to be. It's like, don't stand in, because I went to some where I was like, I left hungry, which is total bullshit. Can I cuss on this
yeah,
podcast?
yes,
Yeah, you can bleep it out.
that's good. Yeah,
And I couldn't get a beer. It's like the long standing line. People are like bringing up, it's like hard. It's
and
like,
you traveled to this experience too.
yeah. So I would rather not like just remove those tensions from the meal,
Mhm.
And you can just, hopefully, if you want a bunch of steak, you can eat it. Like ideally you pace yourself so you can enjoy everything, but some people don't do that. That's fine too, as long as they're getting like whatever they came for.
So Ty and I will exchange best practices in terms of how best to prep for a beefsteak.
Yeah.
So, what are your best practices to prep for a beefsteak?
I mean, Ty, bless his heart.
Bless his. Is he coming?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I would encourage people to think about why they're coming and then think about how they can achieve that goal, right? So like some people just want to eat as much steak as you can. And if that's your goal, you can for sure like research that, I do wonder if it's like sometimes people try to eat so much that they stop enjoying it, or like, I don't know. I want for people to get what they came for.
Yeah.
And that's going to be different for everyone. So that's what I would encourage somebody to do, is think about why you're coming and then try to do that thing. Like if it's like,
Yeah.
have a good time or.
Totally. I just I've been doing a number of them. I have a pacing problem because the meat's so good early, and I'll just start eating, and then I'll hit my capacity, and then you'll bring out like the dessert steak or like this
Dessert
steak, or like,
steak, yeah.
oh, Rod, you got to try this one. This one's the XYZ steak. I'm like, just now, and then I'm just force feeding myself basically, and it's still so good. I actually the Miami beefsteak. I landed, went to an Orange Theory workout, worked out, showered there, and went straight to the beefsteak.
That's hilarious.
And then I think Ty did the same thing, or we were planning like similar workout regimes and then going straight in. But I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think it's just like the experience, and not to overthink it. I mean, we're half joking and half serious
Yeah.
about all that.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I want for people to stuff themselves. I want for people to get like ridiculously full on meat. That's the goal for sure.
So you've been doing these in a bunch of different cities, sometimes where you live, and most often outside across the United States. Like, how do you source the meat?
So
And if this is a trade secret, you don't have to.
Yeah, no, it's not a trade secret. It's always just the answer is different every place you go.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can get a wholesale meat guy who can help me get weird things. Sometimes I got to go to Costco, or like Whole Foods, or it also depends on the size.
Yep.
In Miami, I was fortunate to get a bunch of good meat from these guys that bring in meat from Uruguay, and that stuff is so good. But I can't do that everywhere.
Yep.
And sometimes it doesn't make sense. It's like there's this like everything has trade-offs. Like I know that I can go to Costco and I know what I'm going to get. If I get meat from like a small farmer, like I come from a family of beef farmers. Like I love supporting those guys. But when I'm doing a big event, I can be taking a big risk by getting a bunch of meat from a guy that I've never had meat from before.
Yep.
And that's not even always their their inconsistency is not always their fault. Like sometimes they have cows lined up to be slaughtered at a certain time. The slaughterhouse tells them they have to wait 6 months. And then it's like,
Mhm.
well, then my cow's a lot older than this next cow that's getting slaughtered. So it becomes a different product fast. So I kind of have to watch that because it's like like I also have an internal policy that I'm only as good as my last beefsteak. So I try to be really cognizant of where I might be compromising quality in a way that would affect someone's experience.
Yeah. And the experience and, being only as good as your last beefsteak, it really, I'm seeing, and it's kind of tying into the meetups, these conferences, the events, which I actually think similar to podcasts. I think more is better, but it's just a different type of experience. Like, these ticketed events, the bigger you grow and so on. I am interested from your perspective because you've been doing this for a number of years. Like, how do you think? Because the beefsteak is awesome. It is like a unique, like, I know what I'm getting whenever I go to a beefsteak, regardless of the town, city, country I'm visiting. How do you think about uh, growth? Because I'm just going to say, how do you think about growth?
Yeah, I mean that's for sure that is the thing that's on my mind. And I, like often joke on Twitter that the real bubble is Bitcoin conferences. And I think when you're holding an event, you have just some options on how to grow. You can just make it bigger and sell more tickets. You can charge more money. Sorry, stepping back. If you make it bigger, you're sort of diluting the experience. If you charge more money, you're changing your market. You're just making it inaccessible to people. And then the third option is really to just curate it. Um, and maybe curate is not the right word because it sounds more cherry picky than what it is. For sure, I internally, and I mean within my heart, not necessarily internally inside the beefsteak business, struggle the most with ticket sales because it's not, I don't want for it to be this exclusive event that only fancy people can go to. So for that reason, I try to keep the cost down. Like the TLDR is that I've gone the route of curating it and sort of it's a evolving process, but sort of using the New York Marathon process, which is that like if you ran the last marathon, you have a better chance of getting into this one. If you've never ran the marathon before, you can enter the lottery and then, you get thrown in the tumbler and maybe your name gets pulled out. Um, but even that's been a little bit of a struggle. So personally, I'm struggling with how to grow the beefsteak because I want for it to maintain its quality. I think the thing that determines whether or not I do a beefsteak now is, am I hitting a new market? Like I also don't want to exhaust, like how many beefsteaks can a guy go to for real? Like
Uh, there's 12 months, there's 52 weeks, there's 365 days.
yeah, yeah,
There's 3 meals.
yeah,
Well, that's a bullshit. So there's 1 meal a day. So 365. So yeah, 365. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's obviously the answer is different for everybody, but it's like I don't want to exhaust the market. I don't, and even this sounds generic the way I
But
say
also
it.
your
Like,
time, by the way. Like,
yeah, well,
and
that's
this,
it too,
and
for
that's what I
sure.
was also curious about because, so first off, I am so grateful to you. You're spending your time with us. We're going to be doing a beefsteak for our Grassroots Bitcoin attendees. You've brought the ticket price extremely attainable for these folks because as I had Slim on the podcast and I mentioned like Bitcoin and Sid just came into town. Thankfully, great to see him. And we were just joking this morning, like Bitcoin meetup organizers are rare breeds. You just start a meetup with no like economic incentive and you just do it. And whether you're in, California, Sioux Falls, Chicago, Nashville, Tennessee, Huntsville, you name it, you start it and you do it. You may not have the means to go and fly to conferences and buy those a bigger ticket price and so on. But then when these type of experiences do pop up on your radar, um, I'm very grateful that we're able to make that experience. And I think a number of these folks, it's going to be their first beefsteak for them to attend. Um, I didn't know where I was going with that point. I'm just very grateful that this is
Yeah, I
happening.
mean, I'll pick it up. I think that it's what they do is so important. You know, it goes back to like the thing that I was saying about the beefsteak is like you want for people to create bonds, right? And these guys that are hosting meetups, however they're doing it, you know, everybody kind of does it differently. They're just creating a space where like you can have a beer with somebody, right? And and just chill out and talk like we're talking right now and talk about Bitcoin. And a lot of times, you know, like everybody jokes about it, but it is true that my wife hates to hear me talk about Bitcoin. So she's like, go to your fucking meetup and get it out of your system. And then I want to hear about it. And so,
Isn't it amazing that we met our significant others before Bitcoin? I actually, again, quick tangent. I get nervous for my Bitcoin friends, especially my guy friends that are really into Bitcoin that don't have a girlfriend or whatever.
yeah, yeah, totally. And their whole thing is like, should I date a Bitcoiner?
Yeah, I
I'm like,
know.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
But there's an idea, like there is like a Bitcoiner dating app. I'm sure it's going to happen.
Oh yeah.
Remind me to tell you a joke later. I got a joke for you about the Bitcoiner dating app. It's not about a Bitcoiner dating app, but that's what's going to help me remember the joke. So, but going back to the meetup organizers,
Mhm.
another thing that I say, and I don't say this as much because nobody wants to hear it, but like a beefsteak is not a Bitcoin event. Like it's really not.
Yep.
Like I think that it's like and I think about these meetups the same way. You know, like if you went to a beefsteak and you had a great time, even if Bitcoin goes to zero, like it still served its purpose, right? Like
Totally.
Bitcoin could fail, and I still would consider the beefsteak a success if people had a good time doing it and you know made memories and made friends and stuff like that. And that's what these guys are doing around Bitcoin, yes, but also just like I think it improves people's lives, and I think that's you know, or it potentially improves people's lives, and I think that's just like a you know, what more could you do with your life, like or your time? I think that's like a great thing to be doing.
What are your aspirations and what do you want to do? Couldn't agree more. And not but I'll give you a comparison to the stuff that we're doing here at Bitcoin Park. And at the end of the day, Bitcoin is a tool, and how do you use that tool or how do you want to use that tool is up to you. And figuring out, and by the way, going back to also the growth side, I do think, especially you found a great founder market fit because I feel like yes, 1939, the beefsteaks happen and so on, but you've taken this historical like concept and you've made it your own unique way and you've brought it to life, which is, the point of this podcast. And figuring out, or at least I'll give you my answer on your growth, those three
Mhm.
pillars, if you will. Um, you have a family, I have a family. So I know I try to sleep 8 hours a day. So there's 16 hours in a day. I'm trying to figure out where, and my time, capital, and reputation is all in on Bitcoin from a works perspective. I'm very fortunate. I get to choose where I want to spend my time. So where do I want to spend my time and who do I want to spend my time with? So that's where it goes on more the curation side. Again, to each their own. If people want to go super high growth and like, millions of people at a price point, more power to you. No knock. If people want to, increase ticket sales and, do it that way, more power to you. I think the experience of people to be around, also while finding new people that are interesting and that enhance my own life, is where I've found a lot of joy,
Mhm.
and a lot of, fulfillment in my life. And I think that, creating these meetups, creating these workshops, and now in 2023, creating more, focused Bitcoin events, that have and we only have a max amount of, a finite amount of space here, I think will continue to enhance, my own personal joy. So I don't know if that's helpful for you as you're thinking through these different type of growth conundrums, if you will.
Yeah, I think it's just an ongoing process. You know, it's like a good problem to have for sure. Um, like my heart wants for everybody that wants to come to a beefsteak to come to a beefsteak. But my mind knows that I have to maintain some barriers to keep the quality up and, you know, make sure that it is what I hope that it is for people.
By the way, now going back to the Bitcoin side of the beefsteak.
Yeah, yeah.
I do love the fact that you don't use IBEX, you don't use like an open node, you don't use like any of like and by the way, no knock on these guys. We use IBEX here, and we're gonna use like open node and Breeze, and we're gonna use all of them. Like I love tinkering with all of these folks.
Yeah.
Of course, we're gonna use BTCPay server, but you use solely BTCPay server. And do you have a tech background?
Not at all. Not at all. And you can probably tell that by looking at my BTCPay server stores. I have a crutch in like the Dolly 2 AI generator things because I just use them for all my logos, or not logos, but just whatever pictures I'm putting up. But I do not have a technology background. I was fortunate to have just a few people early on that I could ask a bunch of questions to about BTCPay server when I was like going through the process of like getting it to work and figuring out things. And there's still some hiccups and things. And they change stuff. So, and every once in a while I have to like relearn a thing or re-find something in their new UX about how to do what I used to be able to do more easily. And so that's tricky. I think that there's something about not having to contact customer service, right? Like when I originally used OpenNode and I swapped out just because it was kind of like a growing pain, and they were always awesome, and I love those guys. I think OpenNode is a great project. But I ended up switching out to BTCPay server because I was like, if something goes wrong, it's on me, like within reason. And so it just kind of like puts the onus on me to make sure everything's working right.
That's an interesting perspective. I think you tweeted something about customer service, like customer support.
Oh my God. Yeah, just because it's like, you pay for a thing. I had this thing where like we were flying and we had paid for all these special seats, and then we get our tickets and like we weren't in the special seats anymore, and I was like, no, it's just this whole back and forth. And I was like, can you just refund me? And they were like, well, you have to contact customer service and ask for a refund. I'm like, how much of your time do you spend trying to plug the leaks? It's just like every little thing that you pay $15 or some subscription you thought was canceled and it's still there. And like all of a sudden this magazine shows up that you thought you would cancel, just like.
Don't dox yourself in terms of your age when the magazine.
Yeah, it's true. Bitcoin magazine. It's right here on the table.
That's right. That's right. No, it's apps for the kids these days. It's app subscriptions.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good example. But I mean, just like I have a to-do list, and on my to-do list, I have like a money thing, and it's just like it's so long of like asking for refunds, making sure I got this money back, but it represents thousands of dollars. So it's like I have to just set aside a day and just go through that list and like check everything off, make sure it's getting.
There's taxation, there's inflation, and then there's these recurring costs, like the New York Times, like, hey, you signed up for this free trial. Like, okay, cool.
That's a great example of free trial. And then you didn't cancel it.
Yeah, of course. And it's, even if you set a reminder and then you like 60%, 70%, I'm making a percent, like don't do the cancellation. And then they have to go through all the, oh, by the way, to sign up, it's 2 clicks. Cool. And pay with your Apple Pay. Boom. Good. Hey, I'd like to cancel my subscription. Yeah, call in this 1-800 number. You're on hold for 49 minutes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that's just like, so whatever it is, it's like.
How do you cancel a beefsteak ticket? You have a customer support?
Yeah, I am the customer support. That's the other thing. I mean, I do try to like make sure that no one ever has that feeling with beefsteak to get customer support. I imagine there's some frustration sometimes when I get slammed and people are wanting to get tickets and stuff like that. But beyond that, hopefully I'm able to like.
But that's like more on the acquisition side versus like the experience side of like, hey, I have a question about X, Y, or Z. I mean, that's why I like how simple your value prop is in terms of the experience.
Hopefully it stays that way.
Yeah, hopefully it stays that way. Well, we got a lot to do here in Nashville. You just flew in and jumped right into the pod, which I really appreciate. And I know I used the word grateful like probably 15 times, and Tom will fact check me on that.
Optimism.
Yeah. That too. But I am grateful for you to spend the time. I think it's going to be amazing for the Nashville community. We have an action-packed 2 days ahead of us in terms of the Bitcoin Park Open House, the Nashville Bitcoin Meetup, both of those tomorrow. And then we're doing Grassroots Bitcoin, which I hope, Matt and I hope to have and host every year for meetup organizers from around the world. Yeah, it's similar to kind of the Beefsteak in a way. It's kind of grassroots, Telegram, word of mouth in terms of what we want to build, and then year over year expand from it. But I do think the Beefsteak is going to be the cherry on top of the entire experience for all these folks. So thank you very much.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me. It's an honor. And it's an honor to do this for the meetup guys too. I'm grateful to them for all that they're doing.
Yeah, totally. In their communities, whether it's like, two people at a bar just talking about Bitcoin, and then hopefully that's their own little gravitational force, if you will, that's consistent so that other people can have a place to learn about Bitcoin, to all the way to the hundreds of people that go to a BitDevs or another type of meetup. Extremely grateful for those folks. All right. Well, now everyone's excited that has never been to a beefsteak, that wants to go to a beefsteak. Awayslice. What's the best way for folks to reach you, contact you, or stay up to date on future beefsteaks?
I think probably just Twitter is the best thing to do. Just ping me on Twitter, awayslice, at awayslice, and just look for me there.
Awesome, man. Well, look forward to hanging, obviously, for the rest of this week, and thank you again so much.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, man.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Awayslice as much as I did. Bringing people together to share an unforgettable experience is what a beefsteak is all about. And Awayslice has mastered the art of doing just that and being such an exceptional host. If you're enjoying the pod and want to automatically stay up to date, please like and subscribe in your favorite podcasting app. And make sure auto download is on. This would also mean the world to me. And of course, come visit us in Nashville at Bitcoin Park. The Bitcoin community here in Nashville grows stronger by the day. We hinted at a number of events, workshops, and meetups, and now, heck, we have a Nash BitDevs. More to come on this, especially in 2023. So if you want to be the first to know, join our meetup page at bitcoinpark.co and check the show notes for this episode for a link to the Bitcoin Park Discord community server so that you can stay connected with us. Until next time.